Revolutionary greetings, comrades. It's a Red Sunday, the 13th of March 2022. As part of our political education, we have decided to critique or to analyze the statement, the statement by the president of Citizens Convergence for Change, CCC. That is President Advocate Nelson Chamisa, the Yellow Movement. The reason why I'm doing this, comrades, is that the reality of the matter, as we have noted previously, is that the working class support the Movement for Democratic Change, MDC, which is now CCC. We might agree with CCC, we might disagree with them, but the reality of the matter is that the working class support them. We are building an organ of the working class and peasants. We cannot therefore ignore CCC. So we have to pay attention to whatever they say, because the working class support them. Just as we pay more attention to ZANU-PF, because the peasants support them. We are building, as I'm saying, an organ of the working class and the peasants. And therefore, if we are building the organ of the working class and peasants, we cannot stay away in analyzing these two movements. Nelson Chamisa had declared year 2022 as the Citizen Action for Change, or a year for Citizen Action for Change. He spoke well in articulating the challenges that we're currently faced with, be it economic, collapse of social services, erosions of savings, which pensioners are now finding difficult to get their pension, forced the removal of peasants in their land. We've spoken about this in Maswingo, Chiredzi, in Wange, and in other parts of the country, where villagers are forced to move out of their land. He spoke well about the contributions of the diaspora community in terms of their remittances, which runs into millions of US dollars. Their contribution in supporting families in Zimbabwe. and he recognized that without the support of the diaspora community, some families were not going to have food. He did also note the absence of the diaspora vote, that even though the diaspora community plays a critical role in the economy of Zimbabwe, but they are denied the right to participate in the electoral process. But of course, our criticism is that he did not speak to how his movement, or the movement that he leads, is going to assist the diaspora community to participate in the electoral process. We know that there's a court judgment which was passed in 2018, where the court said the diaspora vote is not in the constitution of the country. Therefore, there must be constitutional amendments. We hope that is going to elaborate on this point. Yes, he spoke about the human rights abuses by ZANU-PF government and the state. But the problem, of course, is that when you give examples like Itai Zamara, who has disappeared, I think, in around 2015. Up to now, is not known where he is. Speaks to the victims of the 2018-2019 violence. It might appear as if he does not care about the human rights abuses that were committed under the administration of the late President Robert Mugabe. The genocide in Matabeleland and Midlands, with many comrades and citizens that disappeared, whose whereabouts are unknown. 2008, in the formation of the MTC in 2000, in 1990, we can go on and on. So the danger of being selective, it then fits to this theory that the Chamisa in person is close to the G40, therefore he does not want to antagonize them by bringing bad things that happened under the leadership of Robert Mugabe. He spoke of what he calls a new transformation consensus agenda, and this has 5 priorities. In explaining the new transformation consensus agenda, he did indicate that CCC is a new movement, and they say that they need to break with the past. He did not explain which past he wants to break away from or with. The danger with that, in presenting the CCC as a new movement, is that you delink it from the struggles that have been ongoing, because the struggle did not start in 2022 when CCC was announced. Yes, yellow as a color might be new, but of course we do have yellow as communists. We'll discuss at some other point. Some comrades who I will not name, at some point they say we're yellow communists, but we'll discuss that. So you delink this movement, if you present it as a new movement, from these struggles. It is the working class, as led by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, progressive civil society formations, that opposed the neoliberal agenda as up in 1991. So if this is not a continuation of those struggles, and they present CCC as a new movement, you delink it from those struggles. The second point, workers and progressive civil society formations realized that we cannot continue amending a ceasefire document, which was drafted in Lancaster House and used as our constitution, which was not written by the people of Zimbabwe. So the workers and progressive formations established the National Constituent Assembly, NCA, in 1997 to champion a people-driven constitution. It laid the basis for the formation of a mass, broad, working class movement later on in 1999. If you present CCC as a new movement, you delink it from those struggles by the working class and progressive formations in Zimbabwe. You also delink it from the National Working People's Convention as held in 1999, because the working class realized that while you are championing a people's-driven constitution, it is not enough without political power. And the workers and progressive forces said, let us establish a mass movement and attain political power. The National Working People's Convention in 1999 then adopted a program for change, which has been a guiding principle for the MDC. You then present CCC as a new movement. You are not providing any link of those struggles to this yellow movement. And it will then seem that the struggle began in 2022 when it was announced, which is not correct. Let's look into the 5 priority points that Advocate Chamisa spoke to. The first one is citizens' action. This is a very important point because it is citizens, as Chokovera taught us, said there's no liberator. Liberators do not exist. Only the people shall liberate themselves. That's what Chokovera taught us. And therefore, it is the citizens that should decide their own destiny. But of course, citizens must be led. Or there must be leadership. Every struggle, there's leadership. Advocate Chamisa spoke of pushing politicians to the back and putting citizens to the center. That was rhetoric. You can't say you are putting citizens at the center of the struggle when citizens have no right to decide who should be their candidates in the 26 March elections. There is dispute in Samwat, in Maswingo, and in Bulawayo because the forms were signed in Harare. The local leadership did not decide on who should be their candidate. Harare to intervene, to say, no, we don't want this candidate, we want this one. And the people had to travel from Harare to various provinces carrying envelopes that have been signed. But Advocate Chamisa speaks of devolution of power as a new revolution. And he says that the people of Matabeleland, the people of Maswingo, the people of Manikaland should not be going to Harare for services. Services must happen in their communities and they should take action in their own communities. But he says he's going to be signing forms for every CCC candidate in 2023. He said this previous before this address that we're analyzing. And you claim that you recognize devolution of power as a principle of governance, and that you are putting the citizens at the center of the struggle. But you are the only person that decides on who should be the representatives of the people at a local level. So that was rhetoric. We know that when you get to a rally, you get excited and they say all manner of nice things, but do not walk the talk. The second point that he raised, we will not talk about his idealist views that transformation starts within before you transform society. Spoke of people should be having faith to the vision. transformation starts inside. That's an idealist view. We are talking of transforming society, transforming the colonial mode of production. We've explained this point, so we'll not spend much time on this. The second point that he raised, which is a priority, is community action for change. And this again is a very important point. The theme of the Red October campaign of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, as launched in Gweru 2019, says, know your neighbor, build your community. And it links with this priority community action for change. And we believe that there can be sharing of notes on this point, and probably have a discussion on how communities should take action, should resolve community issues, and how that links to the whole question of leadership at a community level, including public representatives, how the communities get involved in the election of public representatives. The third point that is spoke to, or third priority, action for an alternative government. He says there is going to be a blueprint on various policies, whether economic, education, and so forth. And that the movement that he leads is going to be making those public. But what we must raise on point number 3 is the whole participation of citizens in the formulation of policies. The danger in presenting CCC as an alternative to counter ZANU-PF, or as an alternative to ZANU-PF, is that you might do a top-down approach, spoon-feed policies to people, and they begin to articulate them and say these are the policies in mining, in agriculture, and so forth and so forth, without involving the people in the formulation of the policies. And I will speak broadly in the program of the Zimbabwe Communist Party on this very point. When we talk about a plan for Zimbabwe, and we are very clear on how we propose to develop a national plan, a national economic plan for Zimbabwe, that it should start at a village level and gets adopted at national. Because we recognize that the local or the people of case, their resources, the local resources in case Mapisa, are different from those of people of Kutu. Therefore, their priority in terms of their economic activity is different, because it is informed by their own conditions on the ground. So it's important, as we elaborate in the program of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, that communities must be involved in the formulation of a national economic plan. But the danger, unless if we didn't hear Advocate Chamisa well, is that you do a top-down approach, which is disastrous. A top-down approach, in most cases, you assemble experts who will sit in a boardroom and craft policies. they then get distributed as the policies for the movement, and they claim that you have placed the citizens at the center of the struggle when the very citizens did not participate in the policy formulation of the movement. Priority number 4 is agenda for reforms. You spoke of political reforms, electoral reforms, media, credible voters' role, and so on, all linked to an election. Constitutional reform, we need reforms, and we should be pushing for those reforms, all of us as a collective. But the challenge comes when you are participating in by-elections under this current climate where there are no reforms. And we know that CCC is going to win some seats, and what? Then you threaten to boycott 2023 elections if these reforms are not implemented. But you have participated in the by-elections. No one will listen to you. Again, becomes a rhetoric. Because surely you can't participate in by-elections when there are no reforms, and threaten to boycott 2023 elections, which will contest under the same conditions as you are contesting the 2022 by-elections. We condemn the violence that is happening in Kwekwe. We condemned it. We condemn the violence that happened in Marondera. This is part of reforms. But of course, what we will debate as we go on is how do you dismantle a deep state? Can you dismantle a deep state through an election? That's the discussion that we must be having, because it is clear that those that rolled military tanks in 2017 will not simply hand over power to another political formation, with the risk of them being arrested for what they did in 2017. So we need to think hard and deep, think until it hurts, around the question of, which says, how do you dismantle a deep state? But of course, what got us worried as communists, when Advocate Chamisa was speaking about the challenges that young people are having in obtaining Zimbabwean IDs, which will enable them to register to vote, was then to sing praises of Ian Douglas Smith by saying that he gave people identity. And we know that that right-wing racist Ian Douglas Smith never allowed the majority to participate in the electoral process. Surely you cannot compare. And they sing praises of Ian Douglas Smith in that manner, because we know the intentions of giving an identity document by the racist regime of Smith and the racist apartheid regime in South Africa. It was to control black people. and confine them in certain areas. Then when you are a leader of the main opposition and praise Smith for that, it creates serious problems. The last priority point that he raised is the global action for change. This speaks to visiting capitals, foreign capitals in SADC region and in the continent globally to discuss or to ensure that they support that Zimbabwe must hold free and fair elections. But of course, we will not talk much on this one, other than to say we are way to understand what they will be taking to all these governments across the world, because we need to understand the class character of CCC in terms of the policies that they are going to announce, but particularly the economic policy. In conclusion, the world priority, the 5 priorities as announced by CCC through its president, Nelson Chamisa, speaks to winning power, state power. And we know that a political party exists to win state power. Of course, it does not speak about the transformation of our society. It speaks about state power, which is correct. But it doesn't say much about how it is going to address many challenges that we are faced with. And we hope that through the policies that they said they will announce, they will be very clear. So we might not want probably to engage much on that, because there are no policies to debate. But one of the challenges is that Nelson Chamisa came across speaking as an individual. He was too individualistic. He was not speaking for the collective. And that's a problem. Some of us never agreed with the President Mugabe, the late President Mugabe, on anything. But one thing that he mastered, even though he was articulating what he believed as an individual, but he put that message across as a message from the collective. He stayed away from using I, me, which dominated the address by Nelson Chamisa. I've done this, I've heard you, too individualistic, not speaking for the collective. And that is dangerous. Dangerous in the sense that you are creating a dictator. One comrade, as we were discussing this point, was saying, Comrade Mabena, every movement, if they are poster boy, who's the face. Yes, that's what the ANC does. That's what many movements do. But the leadership speak for the collective. That's where the whole difference is. And they were talking of a movement which were told currently leaderless. It has no structures, it has no one other than Chamisa and a few, 3 or 4 individuals who are said to be in the interim. And the rest is elected in Gweru, because this is a new movement, as we have been told, they are not in any leadership positions. And the danger is that you are creating the politics of cultism. Some years back, Comrade Zolinzi Mavavi said, a dictator does not beat drums in the streets or ring bells that I'm coming. No. And a dictator, or no one was born a dictator. One is made a dictator by their praise singers, those in the inner cycle, that they will sing your praises. You become a dictator. And this is the danger that CCC must guard against. It's important that Advocate Chamisa does not speak as an individual. Professor Moye, Jonathan Moye, in one of his tweets says, you need one message spoken by many voices, not one voice speaking many messages. If that happens, it becomes a disaster. And if CCC does not deal with this question in its early days, this will lead to disaster. And in the long run, might lead to the collapse of the CCC as we know it. Comrades, it's a red Sunday. That's our political education. As communists, we do not run away from criticism. Criticize us, we criticize others. But this was not criticism, it was a critique. I hope comrades understand the difference. So feel free to write your comments in the section. Let's be constructive, let's engage, hear your views on what you think. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel as we continue to engage. I am Mabuto Nicholas Mapena, General Secretary of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. Amandla, comrades.